Finn, welcome to the Personal Best podcast.
Thank you so much, Ruby. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm doing real good. Yeah. Feeling good. Excited to be here. This kind of stuff's a massive privilege. So, yeah, thank you.
I saw you on a very wet and cold run yesterday. Yeah. Have you recovered?
I have recovered. I didn't stop shaking for like 4 hours. I drove down from Cornwall. So it was like a 5-hour drive, and I got in at like 10 o'clock. And I was like, I'm going to go do a marathon. Because this part of the river queue where I was staying is where I used to run a lot of marathons. I was like, it'll be nostalgic. And then, oh my God, within 2 minutes, I was in bits. It was so wet, so cold. I had a t-shirt on and I was like, the t-shirt's got to go. I made it 13 miles and I came back home.
I think that's still a very good achievement.
Yeah, I know, but I put myself out there all the time. And whenever I don't do a marathon, people are like, do you actually do these? And I'm like, I promise I do most of the time. It was tough, but I recovered. I'm warm. Yeah,
Amazing.
I'm happy.
Okay, so let's jump into all of that running stuff then. But first, can you just give me a little personal intro for everyone listening? Where are you from? What do you do? All of that stuff.
Yeah, so I am from Southampton originally, down on the south coast, and I'm a run coach. But that hasn't always been the case, and just like you or anyone else listening, it's constant, reinvention and journeys that we're going on. So for now, I'm a run coach. In terms of who I am, biggest question of all. So I'm not sure who I am, but I'm from Southampton. I think that's good enough.
And you run.
And I run, yeah. I mean, yeah, what I do, I guess, or what I did, it's so difficult you talk about it because this is now and everything else is in the past. But yeah, I did do 100 marathons before as I turned 24.
Yeah.
And that was, I guess, the achievement that kind of kick-started my career away from anything corporate or anything else that I was probably going down.
So interesting. Yeah. So that's sort of why I wanted to get you on the podcast, because I've had a few runners on already and they've all been amazing. I love hearing about people's journeys and I think it's really resonated with audiences as well. But I think you personally have a lot of great advice to share, which I hope people will find interesting. So you ran 100 marathons at 24 years old.
Yeah.
Why?
Again, when I sit in these rooms and I think about it, it's so difficult because, like when you try and retell a story of something that happened, you'll never get close to actually how it happened. And there was never a moment where I sat down and thought, you know what, when I hit 24, I better have had 100 marathons under my belt. So it definitely didn't go that way. But really what I was feeling at the time, at the age of like 21, 22, I see it with you in this podcast. You're probably wanting something a little bit deeper, something a bit more real. And I very much was on that kind of plane. And I had this overwhelming sense of mortality. We're going to die one day. I know I'm going to get to my deathbed and wish I did more. And I think that people see the 100 marathons. People don't know. This is probably a first. I've made about 1,000 origami cranes. Like the birds with paper. I've done that as well. Why not? And I think the 100 marathons was this creative. It wasn't physical. Maybe that's something we'll touch on later on. But it was a very creative expression of, I want to just be able to say, I went all in and I engaged. And it kind of showed in that 100 marathons at 24. But it's just part of the story, I guess. And I guess for now, that's my why.
Right. So to everyone listening, I mean, that is just insane. I think if my maths is right, that's like...
What was it?
No, 1.5 a week.
1.5 a week. Yeah, around that, a week. Yeah. So I pretty much did them all in 18 months. So I don't know what it was. Again, in the moment, I wasn't obsessed with the figures. And actually, that's one thing that since I have to make a living and I have to try and forge a career, so I have to market it to some degree. And when I do that, numbers get spouted. It's like every reel. I did 100 marathons by the time I was 24. That's not how I live it, and I don't really think about the numbers and the stats. And I think technically there may be 4 more people in the world that did it younger than me, and I'm in the top 5. But that's not how I live. But it was a lot, and a lot of them were in challenges and running them back to back for 3 weeks at a time and stuff like that.
So was there a point you thought, I'm going to try and get to that 100 marathons, or were you just ticking the marathons off as you went and seeing what was going to happen, really?
just ticking them off and really not counting. I never thought about it being, this is my 84th marathon. The only time that I did was when I went on a night out. This is back in the days where I used to drink a lot in London.
Yeah.
And I was on a night out with a few friends. And I had to pay back marathons to some people. 22 people ran a marathon or walked a marathon on this day. And I was like, let's do it, gang. And I said, if you do it, then I'll run a marathon for you. And it just so happened that I was on like my 78th marathon, if we did the math, 22 people. And I was like, oh, that takes me to 100. If I just did all 22 of them back to back, that gets me to 100. And I was on a night out with my friends. We were all drunk at the Ship in Wandsworth.
Yeah.
The most like uninspiring place of all time. Yeah, this amazing idea came out, and I went home that day very hungover, and the next day that was marathon 1 of the 22, and I ran them back to back, and that's how it happened. It wasn't this kind of calculated, marketed event. No companies got on board. No one came out to run with me, but it was a real good adventure.
Yeah, and as you're describing it there, it doesn't particularly sound like it was difficult, but in an Instagram post you made about it, you said the amount of times I didn't think it was possible through the pain, lack of sleep, doubts. I had to challenge myself. I had to become deluded. I made so many mistakes along the way, but we did it 100 marathons in just over 18 months. Give me like the highs and the lows, because I'm sure for everyone listening, they're going to be very curious about what that was like.
Yeah, even like it's so weird when someone else
I know.
rolls back your words. I'm like, did I say that? Jeez. And maybe I would explain that differently now. The time has moved on, and when I wrote that, I remember when I wrote that, that was the final post, I believe.
Yeah.
With all the balloons.
Yeah.
That I bought for myself, which is so sad. But I think at the time it was so raw, and there were definitely highs and there were lows. Physically, there were moments where my body had to adapt, and I had to run through a lot of pain because I didn't live like an athlete. I was eating takeaway twice a day, drinking beer, and going out and running a marathon, and then rinse and repeat. So physically, I didn't set myself up for success, and it was a given. It was tough sometimes. But what I did find towards the end, especially towards the back end of the 100 marathons, it was just pure enjoyment. And I think that what I was doing at the start of the challenge of running marathons back to back was really buying into the grit, really buying into the pain and the suffering, not just physically, but also I had to change myself as a person, and it's really painful. I mean, you probably experience this when you do this podcast. People go, oh, that's not the Ruby that I know. And then you hear it, and you know that people are saying it, and then you have to deal with that on top of the fact that you've got to get yourself up and run a marathon, and there's no one there to get you water. So all of those things, I think, culminated with that post and what I mentioned there in that post. And it was the most incredible journey of what our bodies are able to kind of conquer. However, now I guess I've changed myself. I view it more as when you express yourself creatively, not physically. And that's something that I've been really consumed with of late. And it's when we try and rid ourselves of viewing it as me against the world, and actually it's just me, this moment, let's see what happens. That's when felt like I was really living it.
That's really interesting. I think it's that idea of being present, isn't it? Rather than, the pot of joy being at the end of the challenge. It's like, I'm just going to enjoy the journey, and, it's about the journey and not the destination. That is something I really want to dig into because, again, to quote you, back to you, you said, at the end of the 100th marathon, I quickly realized that it didn't hold any magic. Not to say you shouldn't set running goals, but be careful with the expectations you place on getting to the finish line. You will wake up the next day and the golden chariot won't be there waiting for you. This is what makes the adventure that life is.
Yes.
That is so interesting. I'd just love if you could expand on exactly that.
I absolutely can. What you've just said there is I feel like it's my life's mission to get that out to as many people as possible. I think the given would be for me to say, come on, run a marathon. It's going to be the best at the end. And come on, why have you only done 10? Let's do 100. Let's do 150. But that's not how I see it, because I'd lived many years thinking that this moment, being present was something that we had to earn or we had to get into, almost like imagine yourself running and then there's a train going alongside you and you've almost got to like tee it up and you can just jump into the door at the perfect moment and that's it, you're in the moment. And I ran a lot of marathons thinking that it was the marathon that made me feel in the moment. And then I had this massive realization towards the end of the 100th marathon journey. And that was, we're always in the moment, whether we like it or not, whether you feel sad, whether you feel angry, whether you're elated, you can't avoid it. You are in the moment. And when you are living like that, there's no consequence.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes with the no magic at the end of the marathon. Is when you're just engaged, it's just what a feeling. If people say you're in the zone, but no one hands out a pot of gold to you. You're just living it. You feel free. You can flourish. And I think that when I got to that 100th marathon, I was almost broken mentally because I thought this is where I held all my expectation. But I quickly realized I got it all wrong. I was going and running these marathons to get in the moment. I already was in it. And whatever magic I was looking for, it was in me. It wasn't out there. And if you go run a marathon because you think it's going to change your life, it's not going to change anything.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite a harsh truth, but I think a lot of people probably need to hear that because we've all been guilty of it at some point in our lives, that we've set this big, lofty goal. And then when we've got there, we don't feel the sense of achievement or the satisfaction that we thought we were going to achieve. Yeah. And it might not be running a marathon, it might be something else, but I think it's really important. And I love that idea that like the magic is already within you. It's not at the finish line. And after that, I guess, epiphany, how has that then shaped decisions you've made moving forward with your fitness goals or just general life goals?
Yeah, it's changed me massively. So I was the first person to be like, what, you're not getting up at 5 a.m? Come on, 5 a.m. club. Like,
what are you doing?
And now I'm like the laziest person ever. I have so many lions, or, I do tick over and I do still run marathons because I do love it. I do it for a very different reason now. But what it's changed everything in the sense that you've got to be careful as to why you lean into something, because I went all the way. I'm so fortunate that by 24, I did something that people, not the marathons, but that exploration. Some people they live their whole life and never question, but where was the gold? And that makes me really, really sad because at 24, I did this big challenge once in a lifetime. And within probably 2 minutes, I was on the downhill already and life was back to normal. I'm lucky in a sense that I got that because of the implications, which I'll explain in a minute, that it's done in my life. But I felt unlucky at the time. Oh my God, like I just did 100 marathons and like, even I don't care about it. No one cares about it. I'm living a normal life. I've got to find a job now. So what it's done since is I just don't view anything as separate to anything. When I'm doing the dishes, I love it. I didn't used to like doing dishes. Or when I'm just hanging out with a friend, it's like I could just be doing a marathon right now. It isn't me doing a marathon, me, my friend. It comes back to that. It's just in this moment now. And I think that people like the idea of this escapism, that you have a fitness goal, and if you get it, you win. You get something out of it. And what if you could have that every minute of the day with every action that you do? Because it's all just an action towards, you're working towards a goal. And now my life is definitely more colourful. It isn't just Fin the marathon man, because take it or leave it now.
I guess what you're also speaking about is this like gold medal syndrome, which obviously a lot of athletes face. And I was doing a bit of reading about it, and Michael Phelps is a brilliant example of that. I mean, he's the most decorated American Olympian, I'm pretty sure. And he spoke about after he won 6 gold medals, 2 bronze medals at the Athens Olympics in 2004, that he had this like post-Olympic depression. Yeah. And he said that, you work so hard for those 4 years, you get to that point, and then he said you're at the top of the mountain and you're like, what the hell am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? And he even said, who am I? And he's then been very open about his journey through anxiety and depression. And I guess the key message in that is that your identity isn't your achievements. You know, he said, I had to realize I'm not a swimmer, I'm a human being.
Yeah.
And it's like life is so much richer than just these, like you say, the fitness things.
Yeah, like, so like what happens when, you know, inevitably someone runs 101 marathons by the age of 24 and they pit me off my post? Does that just make me less important as a human being? Like, no, everyone is awesome and full of the magic. And if you pin your identity to something that you've done, there's no strong foundation there. And I heard something the other day that just made me mind blown. It's like, if I said to you, Ruby, can you just explain who you are without referring to the past? And it just like stumps you.
Yeah.
What are you? And I think that if we
even answering that without saying what you do as well.
Yeah.
It's like, my name's Ruby.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, are you Ruby though? Because like, we are the I am, and then put a full stop there. It's just the I am. And yeah, I mean, that's why now I am really interested and I'm psyched. And I had a buddy come over from Australia. He was the guy that I ran loads of marathons with at the start, Sam. And I haven't seen him for a long, long time. And we both just kind of haven't spoken so much. We got together and we were just like, yeah, now we're just excited about who's like the most peaceful person. Like that really like turns me on now. It's not like churning out marathons and going and doing 50 back to back. That doesn't yield anything. It's not new space. It's not expansive enough. But when you look at someone who's just content, and peaceful, for me now, that's the journey. And yeah, we're getting started.
So how's your training changed? Are you still running these long distances? I mean, you said at the beginning how you tried to do the marathon yesterday.
Yeah, so there is a massive lack of training at the moment. I mean, the last 2 years I probably ran less miles than 1 year combined when I was top of my game.
Yeah.
Because I was running so much. So at the moment I tick over. I run maybe 4 days a week. And I don't do targeted sessions. I still can go, and I'm so fortunate because of what I've done in the past. I'm able to go do an ultra marathon at the drop of a hat, or any kind of distance. So I still on a random day will go do a spontaneous half marathon, ultra marathon. But I'm very much invested in being a coach now, trying to be a good person. And it's not that the days are gone. I'm sure there's another running challenge in me, but I've really had to kind of withdraw from that because I felt like I was in a very unhealthy cycle. In the space of a year, I did 5 marathons in 5 days, 2 times, 7 marathons in 7 days, 18 marathons in 18 days, 22 marathons in 23 days. I ran a 100 miler, a 90 miler. I ran around the Isle of Wight.
It's insane.
And it was just this like incessant, the next one's going to be the one. And then getting all these like signs from the universe, like a slap round the face, like, nope.
Yeah.
You're getting further away from that life that you want to live, which is you just want to be peaceful, happy, and deeply engaged. And I think until I really work on that relationship with running, I'm happy just kind of being out on the sidelines because it's not like I was never in a dark place or anything like that, but it's just a dangerous way to live because it's like, and then what? Like, cool, you did 100 miles and then what? Like,
yeah. That's really, really, it's a really interesting insight, I think. And the way you're describing it there almost sounds like, it was an addiction, like a drug. It was like, what's next? Like, 100%. I need a harder hit. And then it's like, maybe you don't need any of that. Maybe you just need to find more enjoyment with what you're doing. And something I wanted to touch on, just relating back to what we're talking about, is this idea of extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. And this is my GCSE PE knowledge coming through.
Let's go.
So obviously, like with extrinsic motivation, that comes from outside yourself, to earn a reward or to like gain status. Like you need that encouragement from the crowd, I guess. Yeah. Whereas with intrinsic motivation, it's that internal satisfaction. It's that sense of achievement or pride with yourself. Yeah. And with that, I wanted to ask, where does your motivation come from? Because I know when you made some posts about finishing this 100 marathon challenge that it was you and a couple of mates and you bought these balloons, and I wondered if there was like a massive crowd waiting at the finish line. Do you think you would have felt any differently?
No. I mean, it's a really good question. Big up GCSE PE.
Thanks, Mr. Powell.
No, it wouldn't have been any different because, it's so, for me, life is so intrinsic. I think I'm very fortunate. I think from a young age, I got really curious with all these types of things. I think when I was maybe 15, I stopped studying in the conventional way. You're meant to do your GCSEs. And I really was like deep, probably too deep. And probably I was confusing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I have known that anything just out there isn't going to change too much. But that being said, I was still, doesn't mean I was perfect. I mean, I ran 100 marathons thinking that it would. So having the 2 friends there compared to having a whole crowd, I don't think it changes anything. No.
Okay.
Because of your worth can't be based on what other people think of you. And if you could put 100 people there clapping, but I think you can have all the applause in the world but be super not happy inside.
Insecure, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that day was brilliant though. So I had 2 friends. I bought the damn balloons myself, embarrassing. And then my friend let them all off into the sky. So we had nothing in the end, but it was just an amazing kind of almost like metaphor for life. I hit that 100th marathon. I actually finished the run a mile before I saw them. I just kind of got the distance wrong. And I had to mesh them and say, I'm done now, guys. And then they like traipsed down in the rain, like big hooded up coats, and they came and supported. And I love, I mean, that day changed my life for the better, because it was like, this could be bigged up, egged up, but there's a lot of beauty in ordinary things. And that's a quote from the US office. But and it felt so ordinary. And I think now, like, things just don't seem so hard anymore. Life's easy.
But I think that says a lot about you as a person, I guess. And I think it's really interesting now that a lot of people are sharing their fitness journeys on social media, because I often think to myself, how much of you going on this run is for content or because you actually want to go on the run.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because because technically I guess you could say that I content create.
Yeah.
I content create to about 3 people, but I have to do that for part of my job. And I think about this all the time. I am just so grateful that I managed to kind of sneak in just before this has really blown up, especially running on Instagram's like massive. But I felt like I was a bit of a geek when I was doing a lot of the 100 marathons, and it was not sexy, it was not cool back then. And this is in a real short space of time. I feel very grateful that I almost didn't have the option back then to think I'm doing it for the content. I mean, like, no one was seeing it, like literally no one. And now, again, like, people have to be super careful, because if you do something for content and what it might do for your Instagram page, I mean, there's an amazing poem called "The Man in the Glass," and it's this idea that you can only really settle and be easy when the man in the glass is your friend. You don't need to fool the whole world and live this life of being fake. And I would hate for anyone to feel like they need to do that to jump on trends, anything like that. So I think about it all the time. And you mentioned the extrinsic, intrinsic.
Yeah.
Go intrinsic.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there are positive sides. Like, social media has influenced my running journey along with these conversations that I've had on the podcast, and I'm grateful for that, because I'm really enjoying the training and stuff. But yeah, I do think you have to be cautious when playing this content creation game sometimes, and just think, is this for me or is this for my followers? And something you said there as well is that running used to be seen, I guess, as a bit of like a nerdy solo sport. Like, your dad would go out in like his running gear and stuff.
I got pied off in so many London clubs for running.
Really?
Absolutely. The amount of people that would be like, you probably want to get up at 5 a.m. and run. And now I'm like, yeah, you go to that run club. But I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I love it. It's the best thing. but it's so funny. I feel this like visceral change, especially over the last like 2 years.
Massively.
I think it's amazing. I just love this like idea that I felt like that little nerdy dad with the little high shorts. But that's what it does show is we're moving with the times, and what was once very physical, like it's all about how you look. Hopefully we're starting to really work towards how we feel, not how we look. And I think that's why running is super popular, and I totally get that.
Definitely.
So I hope it doesn't come across like I'm like bitter or anything like that. It's amazing. But I used to get pied off loads for being like a runner.
Yeah, and something that tied into that, which I know you've made content around, is the drinking alcohol. Yeah. And you said that during this marathon season you were drinking beers after running marathons to make yourself seem less cringe, or for people to think that he's still one of us. And sorry, to me that was really interesting, because like going out to the pub and drinking loads of beers and then doing a marathon the next day is not optimal by any means. Like, did you feel a pressure to be seen as someone who could do both?
Yeah, I think I was probably just nursing some old wounds. I mean, I've done a lot of work away from running in the last few years, which has been really helpful. But I would have been just a lot more insecure back then than I am now. And all of this stuff, I'm sure so much of it was just happening in my own head. And, no one's out there being mean to me. But I still dreamt this all up and absolutely kind of almost embodied this martyr, or I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna booze, so none of you can say that I'm not at the pub, that I've changed, that it's not cringe. And I got drunk. I ran marathon back to back for like 3 weeks, and like at least 12 of those nights I was like proper drunk. That's after running one and then running one the next day. And I think insecurity definitely played a massive part in that. I mean, if you just even speaking about it, I'm like, God, that guy's insecure. I'm almost talking about him. I don't feel like him now. Yeah, he's a different person. Sure. But I mean, I did some stupid stuff, and then on the marathon itself, I mean, go run a marathon hungover. It's a horrible experience. I don't want to try. You should really do it.
I know people have probably heard this quote from Chris Williamson, that drinking is the only drug where if you don't do it, people assume you have a problem. And I think that will probably resonate with a lot of people who've tried to go sober or have just taken periods off drinking. Like, I've just done dry Jan. I mean, cut it short slightly.
That counts.
Friends bottomless brunch. Anyway, but I learned a lot from that, because I went on like a sober date, and I didn't drink where I normally would, and I felt great in terms of like my physical health. And I guess off the back of that, how has your relationship with drinking changed, if it has? And more widely, how do you think society's attitude is changing?
So I still have a big little devil on the shoulder. As soon as people are drinking, I'm not perfect. The reaction is to grab a beer or two. Luckily, to be fair, this is really, I'm gonna nuance this, and it's a different story, but I had a very big light bulb moment. My life changed in April 2022, so nearly 2 years ago, when I had this one hangover that just like, it really messed with me. And I then missed the majority of my friend's birthday party that night. I got there at like 9:00. And as I was going in, a couple of friends were coming out. I remember thinking, oh my God, it's because like I'm so hungover. I've only just been able to kind of get out. And they've gone. So they've had this whole day at Mercato, if anyone knows that, Elephant and Castle. And I've like just missed it, and it really like rocked me. And I was like, that's just because I drank. I just put this poison in my body. And after that, I was like, okay, cool. I'm gonna make a conscious change here and try and just never get drunk. So I'd only have a couple of drinks, and I've pretty much stuck to that for the last 2 years. There's probably been like maybe 3-4 times where I've got drunk. So I'm definitely on the downward. Like or the downward or the uphill. I'm doing a lot better. I used to do it like 3 times a week. So 3-4 times in 2 years I'll take. And I mean, another huge thing that was life-changing is one of the guys that was coming out, my friend Matt, he died like a month later. And I feel I had this like massive, again, like, yes, life is long, but it also is so short. And like, how do you want to spend it?
Yeah.
And it came back to at the start of this chat, I said, I ran 100 marathons because I know that I'm going to be on my deathbed whenever that is, and just wish that I made more out of life. And I think that with alcohol, people are just waking up to like, it holds you back. Nothing good comes from alcohol. And I think that's generally that's the route we're going down. There's loads of like alcohol-free brands and little pop-ups now. So like, it's changing.
Yeah.
But if you go into a pub on a Friday night in the middle of the action, there's still a lot of peer pressure.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And after doing this few weeks of being sober, I've kind of been questioning what's my relationship like with alcohol, because I have never been a big drinker. I mean, I had a pretty heavy ski season, but that's fine. Apart from that, it's never been a huge part of my life. And I think I guess, answer to getting drunk is you've got to have something that matters more to you than going and getting pissed with your mates or being hungover. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I have a podcast recording, I'm not going to be hungover for that, because it matters a lot more to me than the night out. That's not to say you can't have a night out, and I think alcohol massively can enhance those environments, right? Which is fine. But yeah, I think that's kind of my solution now.
That's really cool. My
training matters more. This podcast matters more.
Yeah, and look how it's doing. You said that you feel healthy.
Yeah, I haven't been ill for a while.
Hey.
I think that's because I was constantly getting colds, and then haven't, touch wood, had anything for a while. And I think that might be a cause. I don't know.
Not getting ill, you're glowing. Guy, you got all the secrets. Tell me.
Just to go off on a bit of a deep tangent, you mentioned about your friend Matt.
Yeah.
And I know that you've shared openly about losing your friend, and also family members being ill. And I just wondered how those things have, I guess, shaped your mindset, like your outlook on life. And yeah. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I actually think, when it comes to the running was of great catharsis for those types of periods in life where you're always going to get challenged. And unfortunately, we don't live like a Hollywood movie. And the moment that the film ends, I love like watching films and stuff, and you don't get to see the next day or the day after that, right? And we're living in it, so things don't always go your way. And yeah, I think that I've always used running as a good vessel just to really kind of like be at one with myself. So that's kind of how it started. But I've two of my school friends, one of my best mates, they're not with us anymore. They died. And it's like, oh my God, can you imagine that if you went back when we were 16 and we sat around and we were like, right, you're not going to be here anymore when you get to 23 or 25. And it's like, it's shocking, but and it's a big but. It's no days guaranteed. Like, as I talk to you, you're just 400 trillion to 1 chance that you're here. That's what you are. You're an amazing stroke of luck, as am I, as is everyone else. And you don't need 80 years to live a good life. I think, both Matt and Harrison, any family members, I won't name drop them. They'll be like, you little creep. But, you don't need all that time. You just need to engage in this moment now. And when you really do that, your relationships with these people get so strong. And I was super emotional and upset in these dark periods. But there is just something so beautiful about knowing that you got each other, and it's not here anymore, but it always remains. You got your physical self, but there's always that spiritual side that lingers on. So it's been a weird journey. I've actually never spoken about it, so this is me just testing the waters.
No, I relate so much. I think it's this idea of like, moving forward with the knowledge that not every day is guaranteed, and we never think about it, because the idea of thinking that this is all going to end one day is frightening, right? But
have you spoken about your dad?
I've mentioned it on the podcast before, yeah. But yeah, I guess that's my first personal loss that I've experienced, and I do think since then the trajectory of my life has changed slightly, because I just now have this attitude of just make shit happen. Like, whereas I think before I would have put off a lot of things because I was scared or I didn't think I had time. I'm just like, I'm just going to do it. Do it, because
Yeah.
I want to get to the end and think I did stuff with my life.
For sure. And then there's such peace. I could go tomorrow and I'd be the happiest man. And to get to that, I mean, what it's taken to get to that level is, you know, people could point to, you ran like 130 marathons and, you know, okay, great physical adventure, but actually it's a lot of sitting in a room idle and just sitting with your thoughts and asking yourself what is maybe the first or second biggest question of life, and what is a life well lived, and really asking yourself that. And then, like you just mentioned, instead of stalling, go and get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to bring it back to training, obviously, with this idea, training is a privilege. And I think changing your I have to into I get to is really important as well.
If you can take some of the stuff that we're talking about and put it into your training, like the people that I've coached plenty of runners, and when they do that, their results and the outcomes of, you know, whether it's 3 months with me or 2 years with me, life changing. Just like I went from being the most like bog standard runner to, I mean, I could just do a marathon for fun. Like if you went back to 20-year-old me and said that, I would laugh you out the door. So yes, there is always going to be an element of you need a training method and you need structure and you need grit and you need determination. But I think, and I'm way more obsessed with this conversation that we're having. I think that this is the foundations of how to build a purposeful, results-driven training program.
Yeah, well, you can have a healthy body, but you might not have a healthy mindset. And I think this is why these types of conversations are so important, because I get to actually dig into the brains of these people who've achieved incredible fitness challenges or, I don't know, just feats that I'd never even think to try.
Yeah, no, for sure. And if I can give anything, it's like my understanding of health pre-running 100 marathons in a short space of time, very young, I thought health was six-pack, definitely six-pack. Getting to bed on time, doing your 5 a.m. wake up, eating your greens, all of these things, not dying too young, especially not dying too young. I was really bound to that. And then now, I mean, let's take, you know, either Harrison or Matt, who died really young. They were the healthiest people going because they were just living their best authentic selves. And all my friends would look around and go, yeah, they just did them. And we're all here living a facade. And for me, health now is deep dimensions of living. And there's just unending space and potential. It's nothing to do with the six-pack. And I think if you can, you know, couple that with your training, then, you know, you're onto an absolute winner.
Just to wrap all that up with a beautiful quote you said about your friend, that he didn't get the time we think we all have. And it stuck with me, and I've shared it with so many people because I think we forget that not every day is guaranteed, as I've said. And I think it sometimes it takes the worst things in life to happen, as in losing loved ones, for you to realise that.
I know, and I think that my life feels so serendipitous because all these things have happened, but I somehow got in there before. So it didn't take anything too catastrophic for me to run 100 marathons or just get on the running train, hold up my phone and knew me on Instagram.
Yeah.
It was very actually kind of like juvenile, naive. But what I was preaching, I would soon find out I'd be living. You know, life's too short. You know, Harrison died and then Matt died. And it's this weird thing about I felt weirdly prepared because
Interesting.
I somehow, I don't know, it was like I got in there before. And obviously it's the most horrific thing in the world. But yeah, if anyone's listening to this, just... go all in. Yeah,
well, that's why sharing those things is so important, because someone might not have arrived at that point, but you did, and you're able to share those lessons and share those pieces of advice, which is nothing short of wonderful. Just to quickly go back to what you mentioned earlier, obviously you're coaching other people through their running journeys. Why did you decide to do that, and how's that all going for you?
Yeah, I absolutely love coaching because it's not as though I feel like I'm finished. I'm the finished article. I can go help other people because I'm retired. Like, there's still life in the young old boy, but it felt like a natural progression. And I'd always like coached on the side when I was doing my own stuff. Loads of people messaged me doing their own things, and I just wasn't ever brave enough to go all in. Shock. This is the theme of my life. Too insecure and not brave enough until the moment comes. And I kind of put coaching off for a little while, and it's just the best job in the world. I get to, I literally, I feel like I coach a bunch of people that I just like see myself in them, and hopefully they see myself in me, and we're just a great community. And it's like, I could have either have been a physiotherapist, which is what I studied at uni, or I could have worked in the city, which I did for a year. And I am so thankful that this is my life. And I know that, you know, it might change, and I love the fact that it might change. It's like the not knowing is a wonderful thing about life.
It must be very rewarding though to work with people who perhaps have had to overcome some limiting beliefs, and then they're suddenly running distances or times that they didn't think they could do. Yeah,
for sure. And I'm not like so fixating on the running, and I know that running, you know, makes up maybe 1%, 2% of people's lives if you break down the hours. So it's such like a tiny part, but that's like a really awesome place to start. Because I remember always saying to people, because you almost, if you set up an Instagram page, you know, especially, you know, your podcast page, it's like, oh, it's Ruby Lola. She's the girl with the podcast. You're like, yeah, we came in before this. And I said, oh, how much time does it take up? And you're almost like, yeah, like, I kind of block it in as and when. And you realize, you're not the podcast.
It's not your whole
There's
identity.
So much more to you. And I think that's the nice thing about running. It's if you can kind of get a few things in your life that really fire you up and stay on that wave, just watch the rest of your life. And every minute of your day, just feel gratitude and just peace.
Absolutely. And that's what running is for a lot of people, is it brings so much more than just putting on your trainers and plodding around a park. Just to round this up with my final question, which I ask everybody, is if you had to give a piece of advice, quote or mantra to help people achieve their personal best, what would it be?
I've actually listened to a lot of your guests answer this, and they're all amazing.
I know, yeah. I need to make it like a quote book at some
100%.
point.
And I was like, how do I follow up with that? And I really try and not interfere. I didn't want to know the questions you asked, but I knew this one was going to come. And I think it's amazing when people share their own experiences. Like, it's actually quite tough just to talk through what you believe in, what you think is right, with like no hidden agenda. And I kind of thought about that question a lot. And I would say, just from my experience, and at least what I think is right now, it might change, is don't worry about it. The moment that I thought 25 marathons was my best, I hit 50. And when I thought, I'll get to 75, I got 100. And like, nothing's changed. I'm physically better than ever. If I pose a question to people, go out there and find your best. The moment that you go into the room and you come back with something you think is your best, I'll say, nah, you're further away from it. We're on a never-ending journey, exploration, and being okay with never getting there is just your superpower. So have an understanding that absolutely we work towards goals. We work super hard, enjoy life. But the moment you think you know your best, it's not your best, it's a limitation to get there. And just keep that in mind and just have fun.
That's really interesting. And that's a nice reframe, actually, that we don't really know what the best version of ourselves look like, because there's not a final destination. It's not the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's the journey to get there, and all the things that you do along the way, and all the things you learn, and the different paths you go down.
Yeah.
I really like that.
And then, just as I said to you before we came on air, and if you just deeply engage in every moment, when that person serves you the coffee, really pay attention to it, respond to it, start with that, everything falls into place. That is when I say my life serendipitous, that is the heartbeat to it.
Absolutely. So where can people go if they want to find you online or inquire about coaching?
come on down to Cornwall. I moved down to Cornwall. I have no friends. I've been there for like over a year now. No one's coming. I live in Cornwall by the sea, but I'm on Instagram. My name is Run with Fin, and just check it out. There's like a few links in there, but hopefully fun to be with. I'm not sure. But yeah, go to Instagram.
I think so. Well, thank you so much. I obviously invited you on this podcast because I wanted to talk about your running journey, but I feel like we've spoken about so much more, and I think you've got a really like unique mindset on a lot of things which people need to hear, and especially to arrive at that place at a young age is quite rare. I mean, I know you're not much older than me, but I hope to be there as well.
Absolutely. You know, we're all just doing our best, and I think like I feel like I have a responsibility just to share my story, of course. So thank you so much for having me on. I absolutely loved it, and I'm so sorry for not talking about anything really to do with running.
No, it was fine.
Next time.
Absolutely fine. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for listening.